Hey guys, recently we had a request for what kind of information is on the mental residual functional capacity assessment form that the SSA uses internally to determine what your mental RFC is. As you know, there's a physical RFC and there's mental RFC. So here we got it, and I'm going to link it down in the comments so you can actually go right to it because it's right online. Okay. So if you want to drag that up, feel free, and we can just go over it. They start by, first of all, obviously you're going to put in they're going to put in all your regular information, and they're going to talk about whether it's an assessment for a current condition or at some point that it has to be determined earlier, such as if your date last insured is remote, it's in the past. It doesn't matter what your mental RFC is today. If you were not insured after, say, 2 Decembers ago, they have to determine what your RFC was then, because that is a time period. They have to find that you were disabled. So they have to know what your residual functional capacity was at that time. And then there's other, and of course, if it's SSI, it's always going to be current and potentially past. But for SSD, it can never be after your date last insured. All right. Okay. They start off by giving some summary conclusions. They say this section is for recording summary conclusions derived from the evidence in file. Each mental activity is to be evaluated within the context of the individual's capacity to sustain that activity over a normal workday and work week on an ongoing basis. That last little description, guys, is to show that it can't just be a snapshot of what you could do for 5 minutes if you're really holding your breath, but what you would be able to do over a normal work day and over the course of a week, because we can't be calling out on the 3rd day and the 4th day, right? Even if we could do day 1 and 2, and on an ongoing basis. That is to get the drive towards sustainability. As you might know, it's usually a 6-month sustainability. So if someone would be able to do it for 2 months and then they would decompensate and not be able to do it reliably each day and each week going forward, that's where that little thing comes in. It's surprising how unlimited they will describe people as being when it comes to that very, very tough hurdle. Getting through 6 months, say, or 5.5 months of day after day, week after week without relapse. So let's get into it. They go on to say detailed explanation of the degree of limitation for each category, A through D, and we will get into A through D, as well as any other assessment information you deem appropriate is to be recorded in section 3, functional capacity assessment. Okay. They go on to say if rating category 5, and by the way, that is where it's not rateable on the available evidence. That means the evidence is lacking usually, one way or the other. If rating category is checked for any of the following items, you must specify in section 2 the evidence that is needed to make the assessment. And that, by the way, is when they might send you to a consultative examination, right? So there can be medical evidence that you apparently didn't seek or obtain, or your provider was a crappy recorder. And we've talked about that in other videos. It's really unfortunate. If you conclude that the record is so inadequately documented that no accurate functional capacity assessment can be made, indicate in section 2 what development is necessary, but do not complete section 3. Okay. So here are the really important sections for this. A is understanding and memory. And that's for all of these sections and all the details underneath those sections, the specifics, there are 5 descriptions that they can choose from, and they choose generally 1. The first one is not significantly limited at all. You don't have an issue in that. The second one is moderately limited. Trust me when I say that's usually not helpful, particularly for the under 50 crowd. Markedly limited is number 3, the third option. And now we're getting into some, significant interruptions to work. Number 4 is no evidence of limitation in this category. And number 5 is not rateable on available evidence. Okay. And I'm getting a text. You know it's from the boy child, right? Okay. But it looks like he has a ride back from the gym, so that's good. The first one under understanding and memory is one, the ability to remember locations and work-like procedures. The second one is the ability to understand and remember very short and simple instructions. Hint, hint, if someone has a markedly limited ability to understand and remember very short and simple instructions, they might be heading towards the arena where they can do no job. Because even the most simple of jobs that a fourth grader can do generally requires that we understand and remember very short and simple instructions. So that is a very important one to have if we claim that we are, for mental reasons, we can't work. Let's say we don't have any kind of major physical problems, just minor ones. And we're hanging our hat on our mental illness or condition. That might be a really important one. It's not the only one though. So if that's not lacking, and for a lot of people with severe mental illness, it's not, they can remember that stuff. The third one, the ability to understand and remember detailed instructions. Now, the inability to understand and remember detailed instructions is not going to make someone be unable to perform all jobs in the economy, which we are tasked with proving that they cannot. So that one, though, would be important for people who are not completely mentally disabled, but if they are, say, the over 50 crowd, and it's critical that they prove they cannot perform their prior work because it was more mentally skilled than they have the capacity to do now, that would be important, right? But it was number two that would be important if you're saying it's mental. I can't do my stuff because of mental. I can't even remember two certain things, like if you have severe memory issues, right? Retention, feasibly distractibility, but that kind of gets into something down here. So now we have, that was the understanding and memory section. Now there is B, sustained concentration and persistence. That is category 2. There's several in here. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that I mentioned above. Number B contains numbers 4 through 10. Oh, sorry, 4 through 11, because it goes on to the next page. And they are as follows. And incidentally, if any of these broader categories, understanding memory, sustained concentration and persistence, social interaction, or adaptation are severely impaired, which will depend on how many things within are markedly or above impaired. If any of those you can't do almost at all, there's a substantial loss in the ability to do them according to the rules. You would be disabled from all jobs. Game over. That's assuming the SSA finds that to be so. So even if you can convince your provider to answer one of these and answer that in the way you believe it to be so, doesn't mean the SSA has to think they're credible. They might think your provider is just doing what you want them to do. That is why it is kind of critical that your provider document in real time at every session things that would purport to show this kind of stuff. That's a mountain to accomplish in and of itself, guys, because these people are not very good at recording oftentimes. Some are. It's just the vast minority, and I'm sorry about that. I make a lot of enemies when I keep repeating that. Oops. Okay, number 4 under B, sustained concentration and persistence. Number 4 is the ability to carry out very short and simple instructions. Again, like the one above, number 2, the ability to understand and remember very short and simple instructions. Those are critical to even a simple unskilled job. And such need to be able to do that is probably implicated in every single job, including the simple and unskilled ones. So certainly it's going to be implicated in the higher skilled ones. So when someone has evidence showing that they can't reliably on that day, week, and sustained basis have a reliable ability to carry out very short and simple instructions, that's going to be pivotal for even the other under 50 crowd. Number 5, the ability to carry out detailed instructions. Again, that's detailed. That's kind of like number 3 above under understanding and memory, which was the ability to understand and remember detailed instructions. Those go towards being able to do a more higher skilled job. They do not affect a lower skilled job. So even though that's checked off, that itself will not be implicating to show that you can't do a low-skilled minimum wage fourth grader job. Okay. Number 6, the ability to maintain attention and concentration for extended periods. Usually what they mean by extended periods, they used to talk about a 2-hour period. I know that that is suspiciously missing from here. So what is an extended period? Someone who is highly distracted, highly distractible, might have a problem with this, and might have a marked limitation in this. So that one's really, really important, I think. Number 7, the ability to perform activities within a schedule, maintain regular attendance, and be punctual within customary tolerances. This one is pretty big. If someone cannot get out of their house on time, cannot maintain a schedule, doesn't show up to work on time, tardy, that is going to be a problem. Absenteeism, again, it can't be because you don't feel like showing up for work because it's not fun. It's got to be because of your medical/mental impairments, okay? Number 8, the ability to sustain an ordinary routine without special supervision. That's a big one. How many jobs does your supervisor want to be holding your hand? And I'm not talking about during your initial training period. I'm talking about thereafter. If someone needs special supervision and needs it, like they would be markedly unable to do their job without, that would be huge, huge. Number 9, the ability to work in coordination with or proximity to others without being distracted by them. That is very big also. It has to do a little bit kind of like that distractibility that we're talking about above, the concentration. But yeah, getting off task, that would be off task time. So if someone has a pretty marked, I mean, personally, I think moderately, but the SSA doesn't agree with me. Moderately doesn't seem to knock out jobs. Unfortunately, I mean, I think moderately means quite a bit. It's not mild. It's not like occasionally, it's markedly. So I'm always kind of curious what maybe in this 2024 era when nobody wants to work and they can't go to workers, the ones that are moderately unable to do the job still keep the job. Times have changed. We have a very low bar of expectation for workers. But I don't know. I kind of think if someone is moderately unable to remain undistracted by those around them, that's a pretty big bulk of the day. And I would tend to think people would get fired in time and not be able to do that sustained thing for, month after month after month. But anyway, number 10, the ability to make simple work-related decisions. Almost every job requires some sort of simple work-related decision. Simple. We're not talking complex. So if that's markedly, and again, you could almost say that about moderately, like let's say moderately, well, 3 hours out of the 8-hour day, he cannot be making, he's going to fail at making simple work-related decisions. Who's going to keep you? That's just my realistic opinion. That's not how the SSA sees it. So these things have to generally, if we're trying to use mental impairments as a reason without consideration of any physical sorry, I have to readjust my belly. If you're trying to use mental health as the basis for your disability. Okay. All right. Now, one more under sustained concentration and persistence is number 11, the ability to complete a normal workday and work week without interruptions from psychologically based symptoms and to perform at a consistent pace without an unreasonable number and length of rest periods. So if someone has to keep running to the bathroom to get a grip due to anxiety or something, or some other psychologically based symptom, it could be irritability or aggravation with others and lipping off. Would it detract from working at a consistent pace? Getting those widgets done on that assembly line? And or do you have to go and regroup, like I said, in the bathroom to get your composure to go out and do another half hour of work? That's going to happen frequently. That could be considered. Again, they got the moderately and markedly, but what you're looking for is markedly by and large. Social interaction. That's part C of the 4 parts. Number 12 falls under that, 12 through 16. 12, the ability to interact appropriately. Oh, my tortoise is under my feet. He's being a little footrest right now. Just kidding. I wouldn't do that to him. The ability to interact appropriately with the general public. This one is important because you can't work with the public, and that would negate a lot of jobs if you were markedly or perhaps even moderately impaired in that. However, there are a lot of jobs that don't deal with the general public, so don't hang your hat on that. I see a lot of people who are like, I don't like being around crowds. Well, that's just crowds. That's not even the general public necessarily. General public can be a few people. So what if you can't deal with crowds, then you can just deal with a place that's not that busy. You can do the job. Or they say, I can't, I clam up around strangers and I can't really function and I get palpitations. Okay, there are, unfortunately, for you, there are jobs that don't involve the public. There are also jobs that don't involve coworkers. Okay, they are deemed to exist by the SSA, and they do exist, let's face it. So that alone will not win you disability, just because you can't deal with the general public. All right. So moving on, number 13, the ability to ask simple questions or request assistance. The ability to ask simple questions or request assistance. That can be somewhat of a big deal. So pay attention to that one. It's not a lot of people that can't ask questions, but I've had clients who they clam up. I mean, they usually have a severe anxiety disorder. It's very possible too that if they have an ego disorder, they might not want to ask simple questions, but usually it's anxiety and fear of looking stupid. They have an overwhelming sense of anxiety when it comes to even asking questions. So that is number 13. Number 14, the ability to accept instructions and respond appropriately to criticism from supervisors. Big deal. This one is a big deal. If someone cannot respond appropriately to criticism from supervisors, that is going to be a really hard failure of capacity that will really, I think, limit the chances of keeping a sustained job. Because probably after 1, 2, or 3 times of lipping off to your supervisor and not acting appropriately, you're probably going to be canned. So this one is really important. And it could be arguing back excessively or getting nasty or saying inappropriate things. But it might also be if someone is going to get the shakes and get tearful and have to run to the bathroom in tears whenever they get criticized by their supervisor or dealing with the instructions. So that could be an anxiety thing, or it could be something that is an aggressive response, which there could be various disorders for that, including perhaps PTSD, maybe difficulties with anger management. Your mental health provider can speak to that, but these are the functional limitations that can come to some people that have these disorders. 15, the ability to get along with coworkers or peers without distracting them or exhibiting behavioral extremes. Again, if you can't tolerate your coworkers, if you lip off, or if they make you cry too easily, or if you are a very tearful person on the job and you're falling to tears very easily, or getting very rambunctious or angry and lippy and vocal, that would be distracting to your peers, and that's going to therefore change the productivity of the work environment. And there's probably not a lot of tolerance for that from employers. So along with the business about accepting criticism from a supervisor or instruction, this one can sometimes go hand in hand with that. And if those are markedly a problem, and again, did we go into the definition of markedly? No, of course I didn't give that to you. I'll try to find them. If I do, I'll make it a part 2. Oops, where am we at? Where am I at? That was 15. So those can be really important. And if you have a history that is documented for the SSA of getting fired time and time again for this. If you have a question on the function report about losing a job due to getting along with others, I think it's not worded that way, but you'll see it. You're going to want to perhaps explain, certainly at a hearing, the jobs that don't last 6 months, guys. Even if they last over 6 months, but less than a year, they're not going to be failed work attempts. However, they could illustrate that you just can't last long, so that the problem exists. Not that those jobs are not going to be considered SGA and successful work attempts because they lasted 6 months from a legal perspective, but the rotation of jobs, if it's because of your interpersonal inabilities to get along with people, that could be really helpful. There are other reasons people rotate through jobs, just as an aside here. It could be for physical performance, they can't keep up. You know, they try, but sometimes physical pain slows people down from doing the physical aspects of a job and keeping pace. And that too would be important. If there's been 5 jobs in 3 years, boom, 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 or more, you know, that's something that I would put that into my case as a circumstance to look at, judge, you know, if the goods are there, you know, if the facts are such. Number 16, the ability to maintain socially appropriate behavior and to adhere to basic standards of neatness and cleanliness. You know, if you act socially inappropriate, it's going to be distracting to your peers. It can also cause lawsuits. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Neatness and cleanliness. If you're the stinky person because you don't shower for 2 weeks at a time and you stink and your clothes are dirty, it's very distracting to other people. And I'm not trying to put anyone down here. I mean, I know people, and it's heartbreaking to me that don't see their own lack of cleanliness, their dirty, stained clothing. And I don't mean stains that have been cleaned and are still stained. Might not be appropriate for the workplace, but it's not stinky. I'm talking about those that rewear and don't wash those clothes. I mean, there's crusty food on there. And they, you know, walk among us, and I feel like there's something wrong there. But they're not unable to, you know, be on their own at this point, I suppose. But that is something that would be a big sign of something really, really not right up here. So that one is, and the evidence can come from, by the way, your mental health provider or your physical providers. All of these can play a part in this. If someone doesn't shower, you know, is always showing up slovenly and dirty and stuff for their medical appointments, mental or physical, it would be remiss for that provider to not document that. That is a fact of that person, and it's reflective of their health. So I hope you don't have a provider who wants to gloss over and make you look better than you are, so as not to embarrass you. Or if you were listening to this for somebody else, I will often, you know, I fear that there are too many providers who ignore that because they don't want to get involved in the person's personal business. But you know what? That is an aspect of their bodily and mental health. Or alternatively, they're poverty stricken and don't have hot running water. I mean, either way, for a mental or medical physical provider to not document that is, I think, malpractice. Just me. Okay. All right. So that was social interaction, guys, numbers 12 through 16. Now we're going on to D, adaptation. This is the last of the 4 sections. And any one of which, if you have a substantial loss in the ability to do any of these 4 sections, bingo, you are disabled on mental alone. Okay, particularly with those ones I pointed out that apply to all jobs, including simple. Adaptation, number 17, the ability to respond appropriately to changes in the work setting. We need to have the ability to respond appropriately to regular changes in the work. You know, we kind of have to be able to pivot a little bit. So that one can be important. 18, the ability to be aware of normal hazards and take appropriate precautions. I believe this would be something like if there's something on the floor, you don't walk into it. If the elevator door is not open, you don't walk into the door. It could be a visual thing. It doesn't have to be physical, but because we're on the mental RFC here, they're usually talking about just the cognitive ability to notice something is awry and act accordingly. It says normal hazards. So we're not talking like if the fire alarm goes off and you keep working and don't even notice. That wouldn't be a normal hazard, in my opinion. But it would be, things that are kind of like right there in front of you that don't even notice. Like your brain the fog is out here. And you get hurt. 19, the ability to travel in unfamiliar places or use public transportation. That's under adaptation. If you are able to travel in unfamiliar places and use public transportation, that is a big sign of a higher, more capable mental state. There are disabled people who can do that, though, so I'm not being, universal here. But if you're unable to travel in unfamiliar places or use public transportation, that is not going to probably win you disability without all the rest. I don't like using public transportation. I get a little anxious, mostly because I just don't know how. But I was a country girl, so I drove myself everywhere. Traveling in unfamiliar places, a lot of people who can work a full-time simple job cannot go to unfamiliar places. They get lost easily, whatever. So that's not going to knock out jobs in familiar places. And it's not going to knock out jobs that, if you got a ride from an reliable friend or family member, you can still do the job. So that one's not going to be, if you can't do it, it's not going to be the crown of your case. But it's still relevant. And along with all the other things, can really carve out other jobs. Number 20, and this is the last one, the ability to set realistic goals or make plans independently of others. That too would not be one that would kick out unskilled jobs, simple fourth grader jobs. However, again, it can be relevant to other higher skilled work. Unskilled jobs, they usually don't even expect you to set goals. The goals are already set and you're assigned, little simple things to help meet them. So there is that. That was 17 through 20, guys, adaptation. Number 2, remember we talked about what they have to answer. It says, it's remarks, if you checked box 5 for any of the preceding items, or looks like a typo, or any other documentation deficiencies were identified, you must specify what additional documentation is needed. Cite the item numbers as well as other specific deficiency and indicate the development to be undertaken. So remember, number 5 was not rateable on available evidence. So whatever that may mean, maybe there's inconsistencies, it's not rateable. And that's different from number 4, which was no evidence of limitation in this category. So if it was number 4 and you had full-fledged medical evidence, and within that, mental health evidence and there's no evidence of a limitation, that would be number 4, which kind of suggests that you're good to go. It's slightly different from number 1, which is not significantly limited. This means you could have a slight limitation, but not one that's going to really interfere with a job. Number 4 is a little different. No evidence of limitation in this category, which means I got evidence and there's nothing to suggest there's a problem with that. Number 5, not rateable on available evidence. And again, they have to explain that, because why is it not rateable? Is it because there is none? In which case you'd probably pick number 4, not number 5. Or is there some reason within the evidence that you just can't rate it because of something, maybe inconsistencies, etc. So anyway, if they do click 5, they have to put it down in number 2 as to what that problem is. Number 3 was functional capacity assessment. Record in this section the elaborations on the preceding capacities. Complete this section only after the summary conclusions section has been completed. Explain your summary conclusions on narrative form. Include any information which clarifies limitation or function. Be especially careful to explain conclusions that differ from those of treating medical sources or from the individual's allegations. And the summary, did they have that up here? Oh, summary conclusions is all those checkbox things. So they have to kind of explain. Let's read that again. Record in this section the elaborations on the preceding capacities. Complete this section only after the summary conclusion section has been completed. Explain your summary conclusions in narrative form. Include any information which clarifies limitation or function. Be especially careful to explain conclusions that differ from treating medical sources or from the individual's allegations. So this is kind of pointing out to you guys that just because your treating medical source claims that you are completely unable in so many of these things above, if they made a statement, other evidence could defy that. And so the person, the expert, supposed expert filling this out need not swallow your treating provider's opinion hook, line, and sinker, nor need they believe your allegations. So your treating provider information is and I will say it again, the foundation of your case. Not what you say. Of course, if you say something that's contrary to disability, that's going to be used to hang you. But your very disabling allegations, they are not what's going to win your case. It's going to be your medical evidence. And that is also what this is going to be based on. So you want your treating providers to articulate well in their records while they're treating you. If they only do it, because you paid them to fill out a form, which again, I don't advise, and we have videos on that. And that is not well supported by their own medical records. They're going to be given probably a rating of not really persuasive and not credible because they contradict themselves, or their medical records contradict what they're saying here. So what's going on? Anyway, okay, so that is the mental RFC that is not given to you. It is given to an SSA educated expert, if you will, mental health expert. So it's like a psychiatrist or a psychologist usually. It could potentially be an AR, like a advanced registered nurse practitioner in the psychiatric field. But that's it. And again, I have video on this. I would not suggest you take this form and give it to your therapist because by and large, he or she is going to give answers that are going to hurt your case because, someone might think moderately limited would be disabling. No. Or they're going to say, I don't want to say markedly. I could be, but you know what? It's just, or they won't even know which ones are important and which ones aren't for your particular case. Because remember, under 50, over 50, skilled and unskilled, it's all going to make a difference. And the relevant answers are going to vary. And what can find someone disabled is going to vary accordingly as well. Okay, I know that gets complicated. The fellow wanted to know what was going to be going to that SSA mental health expert. This is what it is, guys. Talk to you later.